Welcome back to Wizard Supercoach. 10th daily vid in a row, and I'd say it's probably the most time demanding one that I've done so far, but luckily I feel like I've gotten something out of it, and so obviously I hope that you guys do too. I already did a video regarding CBAs, probably back at the start of the streak, and that one was based on how players' average scores when they were above and below their CBA average. But after speaking to JD from Fantasy Take TV about that one, I decided that I should probably investigate it a little more closely. So this kind of system that I've used here is based on something similar that he does. It's not quite the same, I think, but yeah, credit to him there because it's an awesome idea. So how this works is that we have here, these are CBA averages, so 0 to 9%, 10 to 19%. You get it. You get the drift. And then these are what the player averages from those games in these brackets. So I think it's pretty straightforward there. Now, the red are outlier games, or what I deem outlier games, because they're only single games in each bracket. So all the other ones obviously are multiple games, and the green that you see, that is the player's sweet spot. So what we're trying to find here is what is like the optimal percentage for these players. So, you know, for example, like for Bont, it's going to be 80 to 89% is where he scores best. So I hope that makes sense. Now, as usual, this doesn't include any sub games or finals, and it's basically the top mids plus anyone from other lines that are CBA relevant. So, yeah, it's a bit to look at, I think. Like, it's a bit to get your head around, I think, at first glance, but it's actually pretty simple from there. So, as usual, what I'll do is I'll run through and hopefully talk about what it means and like what conclusions it's given us, because, you know, the more you look at, I think, the more subconsciously you take in at this point of the year. But, yeah, I'll get into it. So, Bontempelli, he's obviously a freak. Like, he scores good in any of these brackets here. When he goes forward, he scores well. But obviously, yeah, his sweet spot is here between the 80 and 90. So hopefully, because his CBA average is currently under that, I think it's 75% or thereabouts right now. So hopefully, you know, Bevo does us a kindness, which he usually doesn't, and maybe bumps up Bont's average there, CBAs, because yeah, say if he was getting this 80 to 90 spot here, then he's far and away like going to be the number one player again. Not to say that he's not going to be without it, but yeah, that would just be next level. That's like Gary Ablett type stuff right there. So Butters, I think it's unlikely that we're going to see his CBA average raise to this sweet spot here between 70 and 79. He's currently in the 60s. Port have that set 5 players, and they don't really deviate from it, and it's quite shared, those CBAs. So I think Horn Francis is the bottom one, and he's still getting like high 40s or something like that off the top of my head. So Butters with his 60 whatever it is, he's the highest, and I don't see that going much further. So if you're looking for value, I don't think Butters is the pick, but I don't know why you'd be looking for value in a guy that's like, what is he, second or third most expensive. So yeah, just be aware that there's probably not a hell of a lot of upside in Butters. You're paying for what you get with that one. Neil, so he's got 86% average CBAs, which is really good because it falls here, which is just above his sweet spot. Now, he's obviously getting older. I think he's 32, 33. So if he keeps dropping in CBAs a little bit as he ages here, hopefully this year, it's going to drop him right down into this nice bracket here, which would still make him a really good pick. So a few people are writing him off, I think, but I just wouldn't be. And not purely based on this, but he's, you know, you don't win 2 Brownlows by accident. Flanders is all over the place, as you can see. There's a lot of outliers here. He's either not in the mid or, you know, he's in there for these 2 brackets, basically. So he scores well in all of them though, and I think that's going to continue again no matter where he is. So, yep, good pick if you're locking him in. Dacos, what I could see from him was his mid-time increased as the year went on. Like, he got more CBAs. And so his sweet spot's here, but he ended up averaging like his sweet spot's here, so he ended up averaging like out here, like between this 60 and 90 towards the end of the year. And then as we can see, that's basically where his yearly average of 117 points ended up, is right here. So it would actually be better for us, by the look of this, for Dacos to lose some CBAs. I think it's because he still needs that chunk of outside game to score at his maximum, because he's not a contested beast at all. I don't think he's ever going to be. But yeah, if the CBAs stay right up, just like Butters, I'm not sure that there's a hell of a lot of improvement coming there, especially if you pair that with the plantar fasciitis. That is scary for sure. But yeah, he's a next level pick though. I mean, what is he? He's only in his 4th year or something, so it's still nothing wrong with the pick, I think. Heaney is pretty straightforward. Like, it's fairly low CBAs for starting mid, I guess, but he spends time forward and he scores a lot from the goals and assists. So I think that'll just continue as it is, because he's such a weapon. So yeah, I think he's a fine pick apart from the buy. He's actually kind of tempting, to be honest. I haven't looked at the ownership, but he's probably not a bad pot at the moment, I would say. I can't imagine a hell of a lot of people picking him based on the buy, but you got to weigh that up and do that, those calculations and stuff. So, Chalor's pretty easy. The more CBAs he gets, the more points he scores. So that's probably going to stay the same. Sarong, he's the same really until he gets to like the 90%, which is pretty rare. I mean, there's probably going to be less games in that bracket. I mean, there was this year, but Freo do like to share it around between those 5 or 6 mids, and so at least I think Sarong's the least likely to give up any CBAs there. But yeah, it's always interesting to see when it's that kind of setup, similar to Port, how they share it around. But I think he'll just continue as he was. So yeah, Sarong's looking good to me. Merritt is consistent all over, as you can see. There's not much variation here from 60 to 100. So yeah, very safe pick. Although if he is playing off the halfback, that might be interesting, because we don't have a lot of data, or any really, here for that to happen. Dunkley is just another contested beast. He can only really play inside mid. I know the Bulldogs tried him forward, which was ridiculous, but yeah, more CBAs, more points for him. He's a straightforward one. I don't think he's likely to drop CBA average, but at the same time, I can't see him very often at all getting up into this bracket. So, he's still going to be a good pick. Just don't expect 129 or anything like that as an average, which should be fairly obvious to most people listening. That was something I want to point out, by the way, is sometimes I'll probably say some pretty obvious stuff, but I know for a fact that there's some people that watch this that aren't experienced super coaches at all. And if people remember back to what it was like when you were starting out in Supercoach, until the penny drops, it's a completely different game. Like, until you really understand what you're up against and how it works, yeah, even the basics can be pretty confusing for people. So off of that tangent, Cripps has got some nice progression here. Again, he's more points for more CBAs type operator. Yeah, I think he'll just continue as he is. There's not really any value there, but again, you wouldn't be picking a player like him for value at that price. Sinclair is absolutely all over the place. Now, he's locked into my team. I don't see him moving, but just from looking at this, there might not be quite as much value here as people think if he's only playing halfback and not getting CBAs. So he's got the 111 average. He's priced at, what is he priced at? I think 109 or something like that. So that's pretty close there. I mean, he looks pretty safe no matter what he's getting, but yeah, you'd want him to be at that price, if you want to be getting a little bit of value out of it, you might want him to be getting like a few CBAs, which I think he will. But yeah, it's one to keep an eye on, I think. I think Brayshaw's pretty nicely placed here. Good sweet spot there. It's pretty close to his average CBAs actually, especially in the second half of the year. So that's a really good sign there. LDU now, just from looking at this, how it drops off pretty dramatically as he spends more time in the middle. I think he probably just gets tired from all that contested ball at the coalface for so long. So here he's doing really well, but he's starting to get tired the longer he's out there, kind of thing. So this year, hopefully, if you're picking LDU, you would think that maybe the young guys would absorb some of his CBAs and they'll be less reliant on him. Therefore, maybe he could score better. Maybe down here somewhere. I don't know. I'm not picking him, but yeah, possibly for those who do pick him, that's a scenario. Still another classic contested beast. He just gets more CBAs, gets more points. He probably wasn't, to be honest, in his defense, he wasn't as bad of a pick as what people thought last year. I owned him. He was frustrating at times, but once it all washed out, he was still like top 20, I guess, and for what we paid for him, which wasn't that much, he definitely wasn't the worst pick. Like, I think he averaged like 107 or something, which was fine. It's really just dependent on what you put around him. Goulden is a bit like Dacos, I think. So he likes that mix of inside and outside. He's currently averaging 36% CBAs, which is dangerously close now to this sweet spot of 40 to 49. So if Cox gives him more CBAs, just like a little bump, and gets him above there, we could see quite a spike in his scoring, which is crazy to think. But yeah, you wouldn't want him playing like big minutes in there, I guess, just by looking at this. Yeah, as I said, this is to determine the sweet spot for them. So this is a really good example of it here. Is that like there's one standout bracket. Anderson, everything's skewed because he can't score away from Metricon. He's like got a big ceiling, but he's also got a really low floor. So it's just all over the joint. I wouldn't pick him. Green, obviously, another contested beast. He's pretty much here. He trends upwards with the CBAs and points. So he'll keep them. It's his midfield. So, he could score anything, to be honest. He could go 120 plus. He could easily stay at around 105. I don't know. Wait and see. Matt Crouch here, pretty consistent across the brackets here. Just imagine if he had higher time on ground, because I really do think he's a very underrated player. He's an All-Australian. There's not a hell of a lot of them around, and yeah, I mean his TOG is quite low for not just for a midfielder, but for any player really. And yet last year he still averaged over the 100. So yeah, he was a nice pick. I started with him. I just wanted to defend him there a little bit, I think. That Crom bias coming out. Warner could get a rise from Cox here, I think. He's currently not averaging here, obviously, in the 70 to 79 bracket. We'd want him, but who knows? Who knows what Cox is going to do? He's certainly not horse. Just keep an eye on Sydney, I think, because we know with new coaches that anything can really happen. But been getting some good news from track watchers with Sydney and their match sim and stuff, and Warner is still one of the starting three mids. So Petrarca, I think he spends too much time forward because Melbourne's forward line is weak, and if we think of key forwards for them, they've pretty much got no one these days. Like JVR is probably their best tall forward, and he's like a rookie. So yeah, Petrarca obviously has to go plug holes there, which he's not bad at, but it always seems to limit his average every year lately because of Melbourne's other issues. So given what he's priced at, I think he's only going to be like a good value pick if his CBA percentage rises, because right now it's like down here somewhere, which is closer to his actual average from last year. But you really, at that price that he is, you'd want it up here to make him like a keeper pick. So yeah, watch and see with him, I guess. So I've done for McRae 2024 and 2023 to get more of a fairer and even picture, I guess, because he got absolutely bevoed in 2024, but I think McRae is one of the most interesting ones on here actually. If we look at, I'm not going to separate these, we'll just talk about the two together, but if you look at his sweet spot here in 2023, that's 50 to 60% CBAs, which he's pretty likely to get them this year. I mean, it looks like the starting midfield is going to be Steele, McRae, and the Pooh. And so, yeah, McRae should get those higher CBAs. And even if he doesn't, even if he drops down into this, like, I don't know, around this 40 range here and he averages 94, he's probably still going to be a top 6 to 8 forward. So I think McRae, like, I know I started off pretty cold on him, but I've definitely warmed to the pick the more research I do. Yeah, still not a locked player, but he's getting close, I think. So Mills, I've had to do 2023 because really there wasn't enough relevant data from 24 for him. Didn't spend much time in the midfield or anything, and obviously come back from injury. It was not really the same player at all. Really underdone. So we can see that he can score. He's always been able to. Like when he plays defense, he can still score well. But obviously he scores his best when he's getting higher CBAs. I guess if he can get like this 30 to 80% CBAs, I mean, I'm assuming here if he went higher, if he did, which is unlikely, but he'd still score well. But this bracket here, if he's getting 30 to 80% CBAs this year, it's a great pick. He's got to be able to replicate this, but I think he will. Like, he's apparently flying on the track. But yeah, that's what we want to see. I think 30% CBAs at a minimum, unless he's playing like purely down back on that as that half back distributor role again. But can't see that happening with Roberts. I think from all the match sim stuff, Mills is 100% been starting and dominating in the midfield. Tuke Miller, so he obviously needs CBAs to score well, as we can see here. He doesn't really play out of the middle either. Well, not these days, but yeah, he shouldn't have any problem. He's just got to stay fit. If he's fit, he's going to get the CBAs. Like Gold Coast are one of the worst three for sharing the CBAs around. Like they just don't do it. It's all Miller, Anderson, and Rao. Definitely to the detriment of their team, I think. But that's what they do. That's what they stick with. So at least we know that with Miller, you kind of know what you're going to get if he stays fit. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my voice. I think 10 days of this in a row is starting to take its toll, maybe. I don't know. So Dawson, I think he's a bit of a worrying one here. So he could lose CBAs, I think. And that would really, judging by this, it's really going to hurt his scoring because his CBA average this year was 59%, so he's right here. If he drops down a little bit, let's say he even loses like maybe 10%, he's probably going down to like around that 100%, that 100-point average, give or take. It's just like, it's below his sweet spot now. I can't see it increasing with the new ins, like Peatling and all them, like Neil Bullen. So yeah, I don't know what that Crom midfield mix is going to look like, but I'm pretty sure that Dawson is not going to increase his CBAs. I actually think the team's better when he's like playing off half back or whatever. Nix probably doesn't agree because he's Matty Nix, but yeah, that's my opinion anyway. You've probably noticed as well watching these videos that I often don't tell you what to do very much. I don't tell the listeners what to do. I kind of just present it like this and let you make your own decision from the info that I present. Yeah, I don't think that I'm good enough at Supercoach to be telling people what to do. I think unless you're consistently finishing like top 1,000 or something like that, then yeah, you shouldn't really be doing it. Anyway, Rao is just another one of those contested beasts. So he's shit away from Metricon, I think. Um, yeah, he dropped off a cliff in the second half of the year. I wouldn't pick him myself. I can't trust him unless he's getting high CBAs and high contested ball. No avenues to scoring outside of that. And look, it drops off pretty dramatically here. If he's not getting the 70% CBAs and a minimum, well, he's scoring pretty badly. And that's a fair sample size too. That's a whole season. Hayden Young, he obviously needs the CBAs. Like, still got a good spread, but they do gradually climb. It's a pretty even progression here as he gets more. He's already getting 65% CBAs though, so I can't see that like Butters increasing very much because, as I've said before, Fremantle and Port, they have very similar midfield setup and midfield share amongst the CBAs. So yeah, it's just a Fremantle thing. He does have low TOG though, so he could, if he increases that, because apparently he played injured a lot last year. If he increases the TOG, he could actually snag some points elsewhere because he was a decent scorer as a defender as well. So Horn Francis, he seems to be like one of the most controversial picks right now. I think it seems like people are slowly going off of him. He's got a pretty safe spread here though. Like whether he's getting 30 odd all the way up to like towards 80, he's still scoring like pretty well. This is a bit of a worry here, but from memory, when I did this, I think it was only from a couple of games, and one of them happened to be pretty average. So he's not far below. He's currently at 54% CBAs on average, which is just below here. Like all he needs is a 6% increase, and he's now sitting in his sweet spot. Now, through the week, I did hear that he could be playing more mid-time. There was something about him and Kenny talking, but Horn Francis feels that he might not be fit enough yet, but we'll see because Kenny will get what he wants. One to keep an eye on, but yeah, I think he's still a pretty safe pick. Could easily explode should this part happen, but it's a what if, and that's the whole point of the video. We're just trying to take past data and apply it to scenarios that are likely or unlikely in 2025, as are all these videos. So Holmes, he's obviously good inside and out. But he kind of, this would appear that you either need him having high CBAs or pretty much no CBAs, because when he's in between, it's not really what you want. He's not scoring what you'd be wanting at all. He's not like a keeper score there. But I think there's an element of the Geelong factor there, which is definitely a bit of a worry for the Bailey Smith camp. So, Ed Richards here, he's always a bit of a tease. If Bevo somehow, not that I'd believe him, but if he guaranteed us Richards was going to get like 60% plus CBAs, I'd be all over that pick. But it is Bevo, and like I said, you couldn't trust him anyway. But this looks pretty safe from here, like 60 plus. And to be honest, from here, even he's doing pretty well, like 30 to 40 at a minimum. This here I could only assume would be similar. And this one's an outlier. So, yeah, if he's getting CBAs, if he's getting regular CBAs, could be the ticket. I think if Libba, and I'm not wishing it at all because I love Libba as a player, but if he got that last head knock and that's his career done, Richards could really spike. So, yeah, definitely one to really keep an eye on, I think. But until we hear anything, I just wouldn't be picking him because, like most super coaches, I have severe Bevo issues. Newcomb, just another one of those contested beasts with the steady decline there. Actually, he drops off a bit. So it might be a fitness thing again. But yeah, his in the second half of the year and like towards the end of the season, his CBA average percentage was in this sweet spot. So if that continues, this is a pretty good indicator that he could be a good pick. Rosie he's another one that he probably needs at that price. It would appear here that he probably needs like 70% at a minimum to be a value pick, just based on what he did this year. Oh, sorry, last year. Yeah, he's currently at 62% on average, and that's including like those injury games and stuff. And again, with Port's mid-share the way it is, I think it's pretty unlikely that he's going to get up above 70, but it could happen. Who knows? All you need is one injury in there too to one of the starters, and away we go. I am tempted to start him if I'm honest. I think he's actually currently in my team, but that could easily change. It might even be a choice between him and Chera in the end, but yeah, we'll wait and see. Now Colwell's another one that's just all over the place. Like he's got bloody scores in almost every single category here. So here's his sweet spot, obviously, and that's a great score there. Now, post buy, his averages rose to 64%. So if they keep rising, if he goes up that little bit more, and he's, if he gets like that 6 to 10% bump, he's suddenly in this category, and then he could be a massive pod. If he's scoring that, like that's a massive breakout right there. The signs are there. It's just whether you have the balls to do it and what Essendon are actually going to do. But he's one of the breakouts I'll be more confident on. And I guess you could say he broke out in 2024 because he ended up as one of the top forwards. But this would be like next level, going somewhere like 110 or something like that. This next one is my favourite of all of them. George Hewitt. So if you haven't noticed already, basically with every 10% he gains in CBAs, he gains 10 points on average. It's beautiful, really. And he actually did start to get this 80% average CBAs, like post buy. Like he started to get more and more games where he'd get the 80 plus. So if he's going to be played, like think back a few years ago when he was a really good starting pick, super consistent. If he is starting like for Carlton, because Kennedy's gone now. Not that I think those two really impact each other, but there's obviously CBAs to be had. Maybe he could get a bit more of a bump, and then he's definitely worth a pick, in my opinion. So Will Day, he's another one that kind of rises and then he falls after a certain point. I'd say that's just to do with limited fitness. He's usually got injury interruptions and things like that. Can't do a whole pre-season. I would think that he's pretty safe though to get this 60% minimum CBAs if he is fit. It's always the question is his fitness. But yeah, if he is fit and he stays fit, he could be an absolutely huge pick. Like he's priced well below that. So yeah, another one that's high risk, high reward, I think. Durham is just absolutely all over the place here. It's hard to get a read on this at all. Like it goes up, it goes down. It's like a roller coaster for most of it. But he's similar to Caldwell, I think. Like he'll probably get more CBAs this year. I think Essendon are looking to go in that direction. But yeah, who knows? I think Caldwell's definitely the better option from looking at this. And then there's Parrish, their teammate. First of all, he can only play inside mid. We've seen it before. We can see it here. He needs like 40 disposals a game and probably like 80% CBAs or something like that to even score anywhere near what we need him. So there's not many players that I put like a line through, but he's one that I just wouldn't be touching at all. And with that in mind, I probably will end up doing a video that shows like which players are most reliant on getting a whole stack of disposals and stuff like that. Because yeah, you kind of want that built-in insurance that they're not going to have to get that every week, because most players don't, obviously. Like I think the highest disposal average this year was like 31 or something. Sorry, last year, and I think that was Flanders or someone like that. So yeah, anyway, back to this video. Rivers has popped up again. He's appeared in probably half the videos I've done as a breakout contender. He's obviously got this huge average here when he goes 80% or above CBAs. But I think he's pretty bloody unlikely to get that with you should have Petrarca, Oliver, and Viney starting again, which means Rivers will be like the fourth man. Couldn't see him getting any higher than like 50 or 60 at most if he's the fourth man. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe Melbourne want to look in a more youthful direction. I don't know, but it doesn't seem likely. But this is pretty good. Like that's a big indicator right there, because that was quite a few games as well. Pretty much all his spike games came from here in this category. Wardlaw, he's just another one of those obviously contested beasts, needs the CBAs. He should build from natural progression, I think, more so than having to gain CBAs or anything like that. Clayton Oliver, currently in my team, he can't score at all without CBAs. We've seen it before, like Melbourne trolled him off the half-back, I think 2 years ago, and it was a bit of a train wreck. So if he's fit and he's mentally well, and so far he has had pretty flawless pre-season from what I know, then I think his CBA should climb back up again to like what they previously were in years gone by when he was dominating. So I think it's a nothing to lose pick. Like, at his price, I can't see him going any worse than what he did last year. I'd be very surprised. And even if he's not a keeper, well, he's at that price where he can be a stepping stone at least. Saligo, the more I see of his stats and stuff, the less convinced I am that he's going to break out. And it actually hasn't been me suggesting that he will. I've just included him because I've heard others saying it. But we can see here that he needs like 80% CBAs minimum to be scoring at the level you need him at that price. And it's just about impossible that that's going to happen. So, yeah, avoid him. Wow, this is a pretty long video. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get through them all. Moore obviously needs that forward time to score, because he gets goals and assists and things. I think that role and the CBA, like forward midfield split, that should all continue as it was. So yeah, he's better obviously when he's doing like the 70-30 split or whatever. So I think he's a really good pick. If it wasn't for the buy, I think I'd have him over Horn Francis, but that's just me. Rankin obviously is similar to Moore, although he does seem to need the CBAs a little bit more than Moore does. Basically with him, it's just whether he can stay fit and also watch the Crom mid-news so that we can get more of an idea of like how that is going to look in there, what are the splits going to be like and stuff. I don't think Rankin will drop off in CBAs because I don't think there's anyone else that is able to play that position as he does. There's no like-for-like swap in and out for him. Whereas, Crouch and Berry or Crouch and Peetling, they're a bit more comparable, that kind of thing. Chera is another one that I've included, 24 and 23. So he's entirely dependent on fitness, I think, that pick. Like, so far, so good. He went to Qatar. That's meant to be like the magic trick that brings everyone good. He obviously can find a way to score with a range of CBAs, as we can see here when he was full primo in 2023. All the way to here. Like, he just makes it work, which is really good. Like, you want that built-in insurance in a player. Just 100%, like with him, it's not a numbers game, it's just the body. I've included Liam Baker, even though people may pick him apparently because they think he's going to be off half back, but I thought we'll include it because he gets CBAs, or he got him at Richmond. If he could find, looking at this, like if he could find that 30 to 40% magic CBA bracket here, if he could get that every week at West Coast, just judging from this alone, he could be alright, but very unlikely, I think. He's that Mr. Fix-It type everyone's talked about before, so I can't see that happening regularly. Callahan, another breakout contender, apparently. I'm not sold, but you can kind of see here that he can get thrown around a lot, and he's kind of all over the place. I don't know. I think I'd rule him out as a contender, but I'm willing to hear in the comments like alternative opinions on that one. Yeah, not sure. Will Ashcroft, obviously small sample size. He didn't play that many games in 24, and this doesn't include finals, unfortunately, so that really hurts him. There's just not a lot of data. But if you're going to pick him, you're probably picking him based on what you saw grand final day. So this shouldn't really matter too much. Harley Reid, somewhat relevant, I guess. He's already getting like mega CBAs, and I think it's just going to be natural regression that is his way to become a primo if he becomes one. Like, he's got the potential to do it, but it doesn't always work out, I guess. Great players aren't always the best Supercoach players. So, Simpkins one that I've been thinking about more lately, but this has kind of put me off him. He's very spread out here. Like, there's a lot of... He's got all but 2 brackets here, and nothing apart from this one here that is one game. Oh, I guess the 60 to 69, like, you take that as a forward. But the worrying thing about him is that his CBAs don't seem to, like the high CBAs, they don't seem to come in, they're not continuous. Like, they come in blocks here and there, and then he's out again. So I don't think North are looking at him to be like the future. So with all the young midfielders they've got right now, and I've probably said this in other videos, I think he'll be the one that gets pushed out, or at least gets less CBAs. So at the moment, I'm not picking him. But if there's injuries or something at North, then he could be a good one. People have said that Bolton, different player in 23 before he mentally checked out in 24 because Richmond were horrendous. While I do think that's true, this is the most recent history we have of him, so I've included that. Also, he's only training with the forwards at Fremantle. And Freo, as I've already said, they've got like those mouths to feed in the midfield, and I can't see them taking away CBAs from like Sarong and Brayshaw and all those guys just to give him to Bolton, especially if he's not training with the mids. So yeah, he's, in my eyes, he's not a very safe pick at all. Kennedy, so I can't remember which one it was, but another video I did a few days ago, Kennedy was in that one, and that suggested that he isn't necessarily that kind of player where the more CBAs he gets, the more points he gets. This also shows it. You want him, he's got a pretty good spread, but you want him to have like some CBAs, which he was getting, but pushing him right up doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a primo scorer, which has always sort of been the belief with him, is that, the more game time and the more CBAs he gets, the better he's going to score. But yeah, this kind of suggests otherwise. Hunter Clark, another one that's all over the place here. Kind of nowhere as well, really. He's more just like the eye test, I think, and speculation on a breakout. He should get plenty more CBAs, I think, this year. They used him a lot post-buy. And the thing killing him the most right now is actually really low TOG. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it is very low. And again, like Crouch, not just for a midfielder, but for just a player in general. So if he gets like an increase in that, that could really help him. Bailey Smith, so probably the most controversial pick, certainly in my eyes. He's the one that I want to antipod. He's got the sweet spot here of 40 to 49%. He's got this drop here. You can see it here that when he goes to the higher bracket, and there's a good few games here, he drops right off. Now, I don't know why that is. It's not a fitness issue, because he plays extremely high time on ground, or at least he was, like into the 90s and stuff like that. Why this is good for him is because this is pretty much what he would be likely to get at Geelong, I reckon, in terms of CBAs. They don't give anyone large amounts of CBA percentage. They spread it around, as you would have seen in my other video, the CBA distribution amongst teams. Like, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It shows that Geelong is by far the team that shares it around the most. Nobody stays in there for long periods of time. So yeah, that's a good thing for him if he's going to be here abouts, as that distribution video would show that Geelong likely is going to have him if he's like the others. But yeah, as I mentioned before, he does have high TOG, and the only times he scores really big is when he has huge TOG. Now again, the Cats, I'm pretty sure they share the TOG around massively. and so nobody really gets like really high time on ground. So that's something that might hurt him as well. And then also with the fact that coming back off an ACL, I doubt he's just going to go straight into 90+% time on ground. So while this actually, like while I'm against the pick, and this in his defense looks pretty good for him, if you take all that into account, it's still the other stuff that's killing it for me. His new teammate Tom Stewart, though, he's pretty much two different players in terms of this. So you got Stewart the defender, which is over here, and that was a frustrating own. And then you've got Stewart the mid, which is like up here. Pretty much like you can see what you're going to get, but again, if you're picking him, you're only going to be picking him for Stewart the mid, and I think it's unlikely that he continues in that role permanently. He's definitely that break glass type player. I think Parker is pretty much a dead pick in my eyes now. I was a little interested to begin with, but as you can see here, and this was a full season, he can't score unless he's getting massive CBAs, and you could argue that, well, if he's getting 70%, then he's got this 95% average here when he gets between 70 and 80. But the chances of him getting 70 and 80 at the Kangaroos is so like remote. Like I can pretty confidently say it's not going to happen. So then even if he at best, I think, got like 50 to 59, well, this is what you're left with, a 69 average. So unless he's in the middle, he can't score. So I don't know about everyone else or anyone that's hot on picking Parker, but in my eyes, he's not a pick at all. Unfortunately, Sanders, like I included him because people talk about him, but he's not a pick. Well, actually, I won't say that, but he got absolutely bevoed, so there's not much data here, and there's nothing really to suggest that, other than the eye test, that he could break out, but again, it's bevo. Don't trust him. Philippou, nothing special here looking at these numbers. Heavily skewed by his pre-buy performance, which was pretty bad. We can see here what happens, though, when he gets like that 60 to 70% CBAs, and he didn't go above that, so who knows where he could get to. He could get 70, we don't know. But it sounds like he's going to be one of the starting three mids along with McRae and Steele. So, yeah, Philippou lock and load. Sheldrick, obviously his 23 numbers. Unfortunately, it's only 5 games that he wasn't sub, but I remember owning him and it was really good. He made a bit of money. I hope Cox gives him a go because he's clearly a good player and he can score well when he has the opportunity. We can see that here. This was only 1 game, unfortunately, but yeah, this here is the other 4. And for a rookie, it's going to make you a ton of money at, what is he? I think he's 160k this year. So if he can do that again, all he really needs is to get in the team and he should score okay and make you your money. Sheasel is just like Mr. Consistent everywhere. We can see here he's got that sweet spot of 50 to 59, which doesn't happen too often. He doesn't get into this bracket. But he's even gone above, as we can see, like once here. Imagine if he started consistently, though, getting the 50 to 60% CBAs. He could be M1 by the end of the year. And that's crazy because, Bont, in my opinion, is the best player in the league. But yeah, Sheasel in terms of Supercoach could overtake him. It's definitely feasible. Now, the last one here, I haven't gone insane. He's not a Supercoach pick. I've only included Jack Graham because I just wanted to make the point, using him as an example, that any player under the optimal conditions, they can score okay. So when I was looking through the Richmond CBA percentages and stuff, something popped out to me. So Graham kept having these random like 50% plus CBA games pop up, but they were just kind of like dotted everywhere. I think there was like 5 or 6 of them. So I got curious. I wonder what he's scoring in those like CBA spike games. And so it turns out that he's getting 87.4. Now, obviously he's not a pick, and even scoring that, he's not. But he's not far off at his price being a good pick, and it's based purely on that. If he was to get those, even though he's not, the point I'm trying to make is that, in January, it's worth looking at everyone, because things like this, they don't stand out until you're looking at something else. Things like that, there could be hidden gems, ones you'd want to keep to yourself, probably. I mean, I'm not, because I'm trying to make videos, but yeah, I'm not for a second suggesting he's a pick at all. I have not gone insane. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out. So anyway, this is probably the longest video I've done, 45 minutes. Jesus, I better get off of here. Yeah, hopefully you got something out of it. Hit subscribe. I only need, I think, 23 or something more subscribers to get to my goal before round 0. Really appreciate all you guys that are consistently tuning in. Yeah, back to work tomorrow, so the daily videos, I think they're going to become a bit harder to pump out, but I'm still absolutely committed to the streak. And yeah, I'll see you all in tomorrow's video. Cheers.